I'm Randy Smith. I'm the project director and lead designer on Thief 3 here at Ironstorm in Austin, Texas. Thief 3 is an action stealth game in which you play the part of Garrett, who's a master thief. He's like has legendary skills. He's like the best thief that ever existed. And he lives in this really corrupt city, which is sort of set in a unique medieval fantasy world. And the city is full of like rich people with too much wealth for their own good, and full of poor people who are just struggling to get by. And Garrett kind of lives with the poor people, but he goes on to excursions to steal from the wealthy people. Garrett's definitely an anti-hero. He's definitely not out to save the world. Like if he could have his own way, he would just steal and ply his trade as a thief. And he's really just accumulating wealth. He's kind of a selfish guy. He's not out to do anybody any favors. He likes to be alone. He doesn't want to have conversations with people. He wants to be left alone to accumulate wealth and then maybe retire or something like that. But things never work out that way for him. He always gets drawn into conflicts, and people are always looking for his help because he's such a powerful thief. There's a couple major powers in the city. One of them is the Hammerites. They're this like religious group who are really into discipline and really into technology. They're kind of like maybe the Catholic Church right around the time of the Spanish Inquisition. They have like all this wealth, but they're also like hell-bent on revenge and discipline. Then there's also this group called the Pagans, who worship this ancient god called the Trickster, and they're all about chaos and magic, and they kind of want to return the city to its, primal roots. And those two factions are fighting all the time, and they're always in conflict because they have such diametrically opposed views. And then there's this group called the Keepers, which are the shadowy, enigmatic secret society who are always pulling the strings behind the scenes, and they have a lot of control and influence in the city in this like invisible hand kind of a way. And Garrett actually used to be part of the Keepers, but we don't really know a lot about that. But they come to him a lot to ask him to help them out in maintaining the balance in the city, which is their mission. The way the story unfolds is that Garrett starts off on like sort of the day-to-day life of a thief. Like he's embroiled in this most recent, caper. Like he's trying to steal something and it all goes badly and he kind of recovers. But then eventually, like the events sort of precede him into the main part of the story, where the Keepers are asking him to help them out with this latest coming dark age that they're so worried about. Garrett winds up helping them out in his own particular way. He's always stealing stuff that contribute to solving the problems or unearthing more information about what's really going on. So as a player, when you play Garrett, you always have a goal and always have a mission to accomplish. You're out to steal something or to like find somebody or get some information. Usually you're stealing valuable objects which have different types of meaning to different people. And that helps to proceed the story. All of the mechanics from the original Thief are being evolved for Thief 3. So whereas they'll be familiar, they're also going to be a little bit more accessible and easier to control, and they'll also have like a higher production value and just be more satisfying. So one of the prime mechanics in Thief is this ability to hide in shadows, where there's this little light gem on the screen that gives the player feedback about whether they're standing in a dark spot or a bright spot. And if you stand in darker spots, you're less likely to be seen by an AI until they get, a guard or whatever, until they get like really close to you. So that mechanic still exists, and one of the big ways that the player gets feedback about how well they're hiding is that the guards will talk about what they're thinking and feeling. So as they get suspicious, they'll start to say like, "Hey, is somebody out there? I thought I saw something." And if you manage to hide from them, then they'll say like, "Well, I guess it was nothing." And once they ramp down, that's what we call that, ramping down from being suspicious. You can ambush them, like blackjack them or backstab them and stuff like that. So that's all stuff that existed in the first set of games. Some stuff that's new to Thief 3 in terms of gameplay mechanics include sort of more of an emphasis on escape. We really want the game to be fun, not just when you're sneaking around, but also after you failed to sneak and now you got caught. So we're trying to support lots of different satisfying play styles at that point, where there'll be making dramatic escapes by jumping over railings, climbing up the walls, or using escape tools like a flash bomb that'll blind guys so you can get away. We're also allowing the player to fight if it comes to that. I think the most interesting thing about the lighting engine, which has dynamic volumetric shadows in real time, as pertains to Thief 3, is that lighting is so central and crucial to Thief's gameplay that anytime a shadow is moving, or like a guard who's carrying a torch is walking through a hallway and casting shadows, the columns that in the hallway are casting these interesting shadows, it always affects gameplay. So as the shadow crosses over you, you'll be a little bit darker, and he'll be less likely to see you. And you can use that to your advantage. Like, you can try to walk and stay inside the shadow. And then there's this whole tension between, like, am I walking so fast that he can hear me now? Like, is he going to turn around and start looking for me? So as AIs start to get suspicious, when they start to notice that the player's out there making sound, or they see them passing from shadow to shadow, they'll start to talk about what they think. And so they'll say like, hey, I think there must be somebody out there. Or if they actually catch you, they'll be like, hey, I see you. And they'll draw their sword and they'll run out to try to catch you and fight you. And when they do that, they're actually communicating to other AIs who might be around with noise. So the things that the AI say in their speech has to propagate through the world realistically. And this is a whole system called sound propagation, which we've developed here, which also appeared in the earlier versions of this game, where instead of just passing through walls or straight through solid objects, sound has to go around on these realistic paths. So even if like an AI is screaming for help in a room that you're in, and just like 10 feet away, there's another guard who's just waiting to hear something like this. If there's a solid wall in between you, he can't hear it. Like the sound has to go all the way around the corner and through the window and through a couple doors before it gets to him. And at that point, it might be too soft and you can't hear it. And that's all like actually simulated and happens in real time. And if the guard does hear it, though, he'll come forward to help out. Garrett's got a bunch of different arrows. That includes like a standard broadhead arrow, which he can use to snipe guys when he's like trying to ambush people and kill them. He's got a water arrow that can put out torches in case he's trying to make more darkness. He's got a rope arrow that you can shoot into wooden things like rafters overhead, and then you can climb up and get into the ceiling. He's got a couple different weapons. He's got a blade that he can use to backstab people. He's got a blackjack, which knocks people out. So those are pretty similar, but one is lethal and the other is not. There's different consequences depending on whether you play lethally or non-lethally. There's escape tools like a flash bomb. There's kind of standard stuff like healing potions. Like Garrett's got a really big arsenal of interesting equipment and thieves' tools. Lockpicking was pretty simple in earlier versions of the game. In Thief 3, we've actually done a lot to make it more interesting and more sophisticated. So when you do lockpicking in Thief 3, you can actually see your hands moving, and like you'll see the lockpicks in your hands, like in the lock, and you're trying to wiggle them around and find like the right spot to pick the lock open. And it proceeds from stage to stage. And basically, that's like a little mini game that on the Xbox, for example, uses the vibration function, where you're trying to like dial in the sweet spot, and the vibration is stronger as you get closer, and you proceed like through the stages of the lock. So it's kind of just a sort of a distraction technique. The player has to decide, like, do I want to spend my attention on the lock so I can get through it quicker, or do I want to like look around? Because while you're lockpicking, you look around to see if anybody's coming down the hall. So if you're lockpicking a door in a hallway and you know a guard's going to patrol by, you can check to see if he's coming. There's a lot of different environments in Thief 3. We've got lots of mansions and lots of castles. We've got museums and banks, and the usual kind of stuff that you would imagine that a thief in a medieval city was stealing from. There's churches and cathedrals and dungeons. There's dangerous spaces to explore, like ruined buildings and stuff like that, graveyards, catacombs. But then we've also got like lots and lots of city stuff, which people responded to really well in previous versions of the game. So in Thief 3, there's lots of different districts of the city that you can go to and explore. There's different houses in the city or different mansions. There's rooftops, there's sewers, thieves' guilds. A lot of the story in Thief 3 takes place like right in the game, like right in front of you as the player. So instead of having like elaborate conversations with NPCs who tell you about the magic so-and-so that's out to destroy the whatever, like you actually overhear two other NPCs talking to each other about what they're doing or accomplishing or what's going on for them. And if somebody kills somebody in the course of the story, a lot of times it takes place right in front of you. Like they have an argument and then they start fighting and somebody dies. Like that's the types of storytelling techniques that we like to use. We're definitely a show, don't tell type of game. Like we want the player to be there when the story clicks forward, not just hear about it in cutscenes. Developing simultaneously for PC and Xbox is actually, while difficult from an implementation point of view, been like really a benefit to us as well, because we've had to take the large vocabulary that the player had that was mapped onto, in the PC versions of earlier games, mapped onto like 102 key keyboard. And we had to like really resolve that down to like, okay, we've only got a couple thumbsticks on a controller, maybe, and a few buttons and some triggers or whatever. So we had to make sure that the language that the player had, like their vocabulary for expressing themselves, was like simple and clear and powerful. And that's been really handy for us to try to make the player's controls be like really intuitive and really smooth. And that's benefited both versions of the game. Like the PC version is that much better because the controls are that much more smooth and intuitive and powerful. The team size is about 20 people in full production, and we've been in full production for about 2 years now. That's just really the Thief 3 specific team. There's also, collaborative work that goes on with the tech team and the Deus Ex 2 team as well. We're doing our best to make a great game that's going to come out as soon as possible.